I have made a contract with the only real dragon. Introduction. The little black dragon is relentlessly fighting and wants to go home with Ethan. Due to a strange wildfire in the Grey Forest, he was rescued by Ethan when he was seriously injured. From then on, Iser was forced to live a life of raising dragons. The restriction may be delayed, but it has arrived. Those with special abilities, those who cultivate dragons, and the extraordinary world is not an impossible place. Please go to Hongfeng Town for supervision, report outside the city, and do not flip over. Chapter 1. Little Black Dragon. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Ethan looked at the black dragon in front of him, his expression losing control. The black dragon was only the size of a horse, crouching on the ground with its tail raised and its head tilted to look at Iser. Various signs indicate that this is an extinct quadrupedal true dragon. The rumored dragon has a cruel temperament, but the little black dragon in front of him doesn't seem to have high intelligence, with a foolish look in his round golden pupils. Ethan took a deep breath and, taking advantage of the little black dragon's lack of attention, crawled towards the distance. After just taking 2 steps, he felt his clothes being grabbed and then his feet took off. Little Black Dragon held him in his mouth and turned to run towards the depths of the forest. Hey! What are you doing? I saved you, you can't repay me with kindness. Iser protested with struggle. Last night, a big fire broke out in the Grey Forest, and Iser encountered a seriously injured little black dragon. He fed it the magic potion he had stored on his body. Both sides are mutually beneficial, and after little black dragon recovers, he takes him to escape from Xingtian. Ethan struggled, the force behind him disappeared, and he fell straight down. The expected pain did not come, and he fell onto the soft cushion. Iser was lying in a soft white fluff, struggling to get up and stepping on a solid branch. This is a dragon's nest, resembling a bird's nest, built with branches and covered with a layer of fluff inside. The little black dragon crouched by the dragon's nest, taking out a fruit from its fur and stuffing it into Iser. Is this for me? Ethan held the fruit in his hand. It seemed that the other party was not going to eat him. Little Black Dragon nodded and looked at Ethan with a hopeful expression on his face. Ethan has no appetite, he just wants to go home now. I have to go home, Iser said. I can't live here, I have my own home. Xiao Heilong was stunned for a moment and said, then I'll go home with you. The voice of Little Black Dragon sounds like a 13 or 14-year-old girl. Iser was dumbfounded, but he quickly forced himself to accept reality. As a precious and powerful extraordinary creature, it was not normal for the true dragon to speak. No, it's not possible. Iser denied that he currently has no ability to raise dragons. In addition, the real dragon has a special identity, and if it's not handled properly, it will definitely cause a sensation throughout the country. And, it's hard to explain why men and women don't give and receive each other well. You come home with me, right? The little black dragon looked aggrieved and drew a circle with its tail on the ground. We have already signed a contract, you cannot abandon me. The real dragon only recognizes one master. Ah. Ethan thought he had heard wrong, so he confirmed 3 times before regaining his composure. This means that I have become the lord of the real dragon, and having the real dragon as a contract beast is truly extraordinary wealth. The true dragon is exceptionally powerful, and in the historical records of the Sot Empire, it is the war pet of the true god, an extraordinary creature that only the true god can raise. Now, Iser has won, standing shoulder to shoulder with the true god. The pie fell from the sky, and it fell directly into my mouth. But Ethan struggled for a moment. I don't have the money to raise dragons, I can't even feed enough. While a large bag of gold, silver, and jewels scattered in front of Ethan, including gold, diamonds, and various pearls and gemstones. Ethan was stunned. The little black dragon flapped its wings and quickly bowed. It's all yours, now you have money. Okay, but you have to disguise yourself. Iser accepted this outrageous wealth and put the money in a bag to accept. Moreover, with the help of a real dragon, he can quickly achieve his goals. The little black dragon nodded, and the wings behind him disappeared into a running dragon. Ben Long is a descendant of a true dragon mixed with other creatures, without wings and skilled in climbing. Although of mixed race, as one of the only surviving dragon creatures, it is also a treasure that can be encountered but not sought after. Can it be any more ordinary? I can't do it anymore, this is the most ordinary way I am. Little Black Dragon looked apologetic, but there was still a hint of pride in his eyes. You come up quickly, I'll take you home. Ethan's face lit up with joy. He had always dreamed of having a tall horse since he was young, but unfortunately, he was too poor to afford it, let alone learn equestrian skills. Little Black Dragon arched his head at him. Ethan climbed onto the back of the dragon, everything around him became shorter, and reached out to touch the head of the little black dragon. At that moment, he finally realized that it was his own dragon. Little Black Dragon took a step forward, running fast and steadily. In no time, she ran to the forest boundary, and the distant white leaf village appeared mysterious in the morning mist. You stay here, I'll go take a look. Ethan jumped off the dragon's back, afraid to bring it back to the village. Don't worry, I have a solution. Little Black Dragon understood, and in the blink of an eye, it turned into a white mist, entering Ethan's heart. Ethan instinctively touched it and suddenly felt that the little black dragon was hiding in a secret space, which was his own storage space. This way, no one will notice. The voice of Little Black Dragon came from the space. It's really amazing, Ethan sighed. He took a deep breath and walked towards the village as usual. At this moment of dawn, the village was very quiet, and Iser smoothly slipped back home. Just as he closed the door to breathe a sigh of relief, he heard bottles and jars fall to the ground behind him. He turned around and saw Little Black Dragon crouching behind his back. Little Black Dragon looked innocent and wanted to scratch his head with his paws, but he lifted his hand and flipped over the nearby chair. I'm sorry. Little Black Dragon lowered his head and didn't dare to look at him. She heard Ethan come over and thought he would take a critical hit, so she quickly closed her eyes. But Iser just touched her head, then helped the chair up and moved it to the corner, and also tidied up the bottles and jars. Little Black Dragon opened one eye and observed him. Master, aren't you angry? I'm not angry, Iser said as he asked Little Black Dragon, am I so scary? Compared to the two of them, dragons are the most terrifying beasts. Little Black Dragon shook his head. My name is Iser Pedro, and I will take care of you in the future. Iser smiled and said, do you have a name? No, Iser can help me pick one. Little Black Dragon looked expectant. Do you have anything you like? Iser asked, he doesn't have much culture and really doesn't know what to call. Little Black Dragon thought for a moment and said, I like the brightest star. Let's call you the Morning Star, Iser said. The Morning Star is the brightest one. Little Black Dragon is very satisfied with this name. Little Morning Star, Ethan shouted. Little Black Dragon shook its tail in response. Ethan cleaned up everything around her and said, all right, you can move freely now. Xiaoqingsing stood up and moved around for a while, then wagged his tail and leaned closer to Iser. She's really clingy, Ethan sighed and looked at the little Morning Star right within reach. As she got closer, she could see more clearly, and it was only then that Iser realized she had an injury to her front leg. Your injury hasn't healed yet. Iser thought she would be fine after taking the elixir yesterday, so she quickly dug out the medicine box and applied it. The wound on the dragon's leg was bleeding again due to running. Ethan regretted it to death. He didn't notice it all the way and walked home on his own if he had known. Iser sprinkled the powder on Little Morning Star's wound, wrapped it in a bandage, and instructed her not to run around. When she looked up, she saw that she was shedding tears. Be good, stop crying. Ethan reached out and touched her head. He felt like he needed to coax her, so he hugged the dragon brain bag and placed it in his arms, smooth and fluffy. Suddenly remembering something, Iser asked, "Who hurt you?" Chapter 2. Father Who Blocks the Way. You are listening at Novel Full. Audio. Little Morning Star hesitated to speak, but in the end, he hesitated and said, "A mysterious person, he ignited the big fire. Can't even you beat him?" Ethan was shocked. Little Morning Star is a true dragon, is he a god? I'm still young, and when I grow up, I'll definitely beat him down. Little Morning Star looked embarrassed and quickly changed the topic. Ethan, why go to the Grey Forest late at night? It's very dangerous there. Iser was taken aback for a moment, feeling a bit resistant, but he still lifted the scar and said, "Because I'm not willing, I have to give my father and mother an explanation." The atmosphere suddenly became solemn. The people of Bay Village have always made a living by hunting and gathering, but 3 years ago, when I was 13 years old, something suddenly happened. Iser said of these past events, and dusty memories emerged again. I followed my father into the mountains to hunt and encountered monsters, and only I escaped from the whole team. From then on, anyone who entered the Grey Forest would disappear. Even if she escaped and got injured, the wound would be difficult to heal. My mother had to go to the Grey Forest to collect herbs in order to save people with drugs. Even she disappeared 6 months ago. Ethan looked down at the medicine in his hand and said, "These medicines were all refined by her. The magic potion she gave you yesterday was the one she left for me to save my life." Iser's mother is a very powerful pharmacist, she should be a superpower, said Little Morning Star. She is trained as a magic potion. There are extraordinary creatures in this world, and there are also many people who can use extraordinary powers, known as superpowers. They can consume a special type of energy, resonate with the surrounding natural elements, and even enchant drugs and weapons. Ethan nodded and said, "She's a superpower, and so am I. It's just that I'm far behind her. My mother can refine potions to save people, but I only have brute power." Xiao Qinxing comforted him and said, "Your mother is so amazing, there must be nothing wrong with her. Maybe she's just in trouble and can't come to see you." Ethan gave a bitter smile and said, "Thank you." Xiao Qinxing arched his head and said, "Now go to the Grey Forest, let's drive away those monsters together." Ethan was amused by her and grabbed the dragon's horn, preventing her head from arching. "You are more familiar with Grey Forest than I am, and it's up to you to drive out monsters in the future," she said. In the past, he only hunted low-level monsters on the outskirts of the Grey Forest. These low-level monsters were stronger than ordinary beasts, but with armor and his own strength, he could also deal with them. Now, with Little Morning Star, you can kill even more powerful monsters. "Of course, I have lived in the Grey Forest since I was young, and I know where they are hidden," said Little Morning Star. "Do you know why these monsters appear?" Ethan asked. Since Little Morning Star has always lived in the Grey Forest, he must know something. Some people say it was the awakening of the mountain god who released the monsters. Xiao Qinxing frowned and shook his head. "There's no mountain god, nothing. These monsters are from the north," he said. "North." Iser couldn't believe it. The northern part of the Grey Forest is extremely cold, and it has already crossed the borders of the Sahed Empire. It's too dangerous over there. I can only go and explore when I become stronger. Little Morning Star tugged at Iser's clothes, afraid that he would have to go north if he couldn't bear it. Ethan calmed himself down. This matter is more complicated than he thought. He must make himself stronger, otherwise he can only stand still. "I understand, don't die." Ethan smiled. "Let's go to the Grey Forest." He has prepared his equipment, brought his weapons, and some medicine. Today, we have 3 tasks. Hunting, collecting herbs, and driving away monsters. Ethan patted Little Morning Star's neck. "Hide in my storage space." "Why, isn't it more convenient for me to carry you to the Grey Forest?" Little Morning Star was puzzled and ran a few steps to get there. Are you afraid of being seen? Others don't know I'm a superpower, and I'm afraid I'll scare them and they'll treat me like a monster, Iser explained. Xiaoqingsing was stunned and said, Ethan, you're so foolish. They'll find out sooner or later. Ethan scratched his head and was also very conflicted. I understand, but I don't know how to deal with it. Let's do this for now and see if there are suitable opportunities in the future. Interpersonal relationships are still too complicated for him. I understand now, I will hide. Xiaoqingsing nodded and turned into a cloud of smoke as he returned to the space. Don't worry, I won't run out casually. I've wronged you. Ethan felt like he wasn't a worry-free host. He picked up his things and walked out the door, and as the village grew larger, he greeted Ethan back and forth. Ethan, the gray forest is dangerous, be careful. Are there enough weapons? If not, I'll give you another one. Ethan, if you're short of food, go directly to my house to pick it up. Ethan responded to them with a smile, feeling warm in his heart. But his good mood didn't last long. As soon as he walked out of the village, he saw the village priest blocking his way into the mountain. Where did you go last night? The priest asked, looking at Iser with a scrutinizing gaze. Gray forest. Iser was quite calm, knowing that the priest must have investigated and lying was meaningless. The priest's face was gloomy and terrifying, with suppressed anger in his eyes. I warn you not to go hunting in the mountains again. Hunting is murder, and the mountain god will not spare you, the murderer. There have always been rumors about the mountain god, and the villagers believe that he is an evil god. Only the priest worships the mountain god like a demon, and his thoughts are distorted accordingly. Murderers. Ethan thought it was ridiculous. The monsters in the mountains are the murderers, who have killed more than 10 people in Bay Village. Yu reading www.uukangshu.net. A bunch of nonsense. Humans are superfluous, and those people deserve it when they die. The priest's voice trembled as he spoke excitedly, and in his eyes, Iser was simply hopeless. Ethan laughed back angrily and said, sooner or later, I will kill the mountain god and let him know who is unnecessary. Shut up, you're disrespectful to the gods. The priest suddenly lost control of his emotions. A barrier rose up from the ground and trapped Iser, and the priest looked at the person trapped in the cage with a fierce and terrifying expression. Ethan was shocked by his reaction. That guy seemed to be possessed by evil, and many heretical gods like to develop their followers, while their followers were somewhat mentally abnormal. At this moment, a flash of fire flashed by, and the barrier was shattered, scattered and shattered. Xiaoqingsing protected Iser behind her, and she sensed danger and quickly ran to save someone. The explosion attracted more people, and the villagers ran to the village entrance and saw a jet-black dragon, which collapsed on the spot. Done. It's been long, none of us can survive. Wait, isn't that Ethan? Ethan's heart trembled slightly, not expecting to be exposed in such a way. Although he was afraid of being ostracized by the villagers, he still touched Little Morning Star's head and asked her to stop and not attack the villagers. This behavior undoubtedly indicates that there is a relationship between Iser and Little Morning Star, between a superpower and a contract beast. The villagers later realized that Iser had a close relationship with the running dragon, so they dared to stay and watch the excitement. Hiding behind the Little Morning Star, Iser finally found someone to support him. He said to the priest, "You are under the control of an evil god." But the uncontrollable priest couldn't even listen to Ethan's words. Blue blood vessels appeared on his face, and his expression was painful as if something was about to emerge from his body. Chapter 3. Strange Insects and Insects. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Ethan, you step back, he's out of control, said Little Morning Star, who had been vigilantly staring at the priest. Ethan nodded. He didn't know what losing control was yet. When he ran to a safe distance, he turned around and found that the priest had turned into a monster. The monster is nearly 3 meters tall, with bright fur all over its body that looks like blood. Although it walks upright, its legs resemble the hind limbs of some animal, with tails growing from behind and horns growing even on its head. The villagers around were frightened and scattered when they saw this scene. The scream woke the monster up, and it let out a roar before raising its claws and charging towards the crowd. Little Morning Star bit the monster's tail and grabbed the ground with its claws, pulling it tightly. The monster felt pain and immediately turned around to attack the black dragon that bit its tail. Be careful. Ethan's heart tugged. Although the true dragon is powerful, Little Morning Star is still a young dragon, and I don't know if he can defeat the out-of-control monster. Xiaoqingsing immediately let go and jumped back flexibly, instantly widening the distance. In the dragon running form, her speed and flexibility have surpassed the monster's by several levels. After the monster pounced into the air, it chased after it in a fit of anger. Uncontrollable monsters can only use brute force, wave their claws randomly, and attack without any organization. Little Morning Star easily dodged, even flying a kite leisurely, circling around the monster in an attempt to find something. What is she doing? Ethan was a bit puzzled. Is there anything on the monster? Thinking of this, Iser also began to observe. He saw a strange tattoo on the back of the monster, facing the heart, wriggling as if it were a living creature. On his back. Iser reminded. Xiaoqingsing received the command and opened his mouth to spit out a flame, which rushed straight towards the monster's door. The monster hurriedly protected its face and crossed its arms to block the flames. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Xiaoqingsing quickly climbed onto the monster's back and saw a strange tattoo. The black blood vessels formed a sheep's head, with roses wrapped around its horns. At this point, the monster had already reacted and lifted its arm to grab it backwards with its backhand. At the critical moment, Xiaoqingsing bit the tattoo and pulled it out with all his might. The monster's body began to twitch, with no strength to backhand in pain, and even its cries turned into howls. A pitch-black blood vessel was pulled out, making a strange baby cry, wriggling in an attempt to find a new host, and even several climbed onto Little Morning Star's face. Xiaoqingsing turned her head and threw the strange thing onto the ground. The monster fell to the ground, slowly recovering its humanoid form and eventually transforming back into a human form. However, the priest's face was already pale, as if half of his life had been sucked away. Ethan walked over and looked at something on the ground, but a paw stopped him. Xiaoqingsing shook his head, afraid that something might happen to him. Ethan touched her head and said, "I won't touch it." He looked at the blood vessels, and the eerie vessels no longer spread outward, but began to wrap inward, becoming a wriggling ball. Is it because this thing parasitizes within the priest's body that he loses control and transforms into a monster? How did this thing come from? Ethan felt it was time to ask the priest, so he turned around and walked towards him. At this moment, the priest fell to the ground, his face pale, and his mouth blood-stained as if he had been seriously injured. What is this? Where did you get it from? Ethan asked. I don't know, the priest said, feeling confused. I didn't even know that I had been planted with this thing. Is it related to the monsters in the Grey Forest? Iser asked, wanting to know what exactly happened in the Grey Forest. 3 years ago, strange things suddenly occurred frequently, and many hunters went missing. The priest hesitated and said, "Don't ask, that's not something we can solve." Ethan wanted to dig deeper, but when he saw the priest's pale face, he had to give up. Perhaps, the priest looked at Ethan with a complex expression, cultivate your running dragon well, and perhaps you will have the ability to find the secret of the Grey Forest. Iser paused slightly and looked at the Little Morning Star beside him. She is not a running dragon, but a true pure-blood dragon, and her future is immeasurable. When he was stunned, a group of curious villagers ran over to watch. I'll go, what's this thing? Isn't the so-called mountain god just this thing? Their attention shifted from eerie blood vessels to mountain gods, ultimately locking onto Iser. Iser noticed the gaze of the villagers and was so nervous that his forehead began to sweat. It's over, this time he will definitely be driven out of the village by the whole village. Iser, are you a superpower? Then you must be very powerful. Ethan, you're hiding deep. No wonder you're not afraid of monsters when hunting in the Grey Forest. It turns out you've contracted such a powerful extraordinary creature. The villagers surrounded Iser, both surprised and delighted. They finally found their support and said, as long as you're here, we're not afraid of monsters. Ethan couldn't believe his ears, and seeing the proud and happy smiles of the villagers, he was overjoyed. Turns out they don't hate psychics, it's because they overthink it themselves. At this moment, a girl with red hair appeared in the crowd, her big blue eyes full of envy. Brother Iser, I want to touch your dragon. Little Morning Star silently retreated behind Ethan. I want it too. I want it too. And me too. All the fox friends, who usually play well with Ethan, gathered around. At this moment, a strong reprimand came from afar. Who's fighting? In an instant, there was a complete silence. Ethan's forehead was sweating, and the old village chief hated fighting the most. As expected, the old village chief walked over with a group of people and a gloomy face. Who's fighting? The old village chief roared again. The villagers tacitly gave way to a path, and Yu reading www.uukangshu.net pointed towards Iser in unison. It's you again, kid. The old village chief walked over and was about to grab Iser's collar, only to be stunned when he saw the black dragon next to him. Village chief, this is my dragon, don't be afraid. Iser touched Little Morning Star's head. Are you a superpower? The old village chief whispered, his voice trembling. Unable to hide, Iser obediently nodded and admitted, afraid to look into the eyes of the old village chief. You just woke up today, right? The village chief grabbed Iser's hand and gave him a wink. I didn't expect there to be a genius hidden in your village. A strange man walked around the village chief and looked at him, who was only 30 years old, with black hair, blue eyes, a tall nose bridge, and wearing glasses only worn by scholars. He was dressed like a professor on campus. Iser saw a golden eye emblem hanging around his neck, and the bishops who followed him were only wearing silver rose symbols, indicating that he was a high-ranking member of the church. Hello, my name is Taylor and I am a scholar from the campus. The man smiled politely at Ethan. All psychics are counted and reported, but I haven't seen you before. Ethan was stunned, he had never heard what the other person was saying. However, the church does have this regulation because the power of the supernatural is strong, and being strong means danger. The church must implement unified management, concentrate and supervise the supernatural, and even restrict some freedom. Concealing and refusing to report is a serious crime. You can safely return from every time you go to the Grey Forest, so you have long been a superpower. You lied, Taylor said, staring into Iser's eyes like a cat that had only discovered its prey. Little Morning Star sensed something and grabbed Ethan's clothes, pulling him behind him and staring closely at Taylor. Chapter 4. Go to Hongfeng Town. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Both sides were in a state of tension, and Taylor was not afraid of the running dragon in front of him. Little Morning Star also stared at Taylor angrily, wishing to eat his head in one bite. The old village chief timidly intercepted them and tried to plead, Sir, our village is remote and poor, and no one has told us about it. Ethan is usually stronger, and no one thinks about it. I'm afraid he doesn't even know about it. The villagers are also pleading for him. They say that Iser has been protecting the village for years, and without him, he would not dare to go hunting in the mountains. Moreover, they have never heard of the regulations reported. Father, haven't you reminded them? Taylor looked at the priest. The villagers may not know, but the priest must be familiar with the rules of the church. I didn't tell them, the priest said calmly. Why? The priest showed a mournful expression and said, Lord Taylor, monsters are everywhere in the Grey Forest. I have reported to the church that there has been no one to manage it for 3 whole years. Without the powers, this village has long been gone. The bishop beside frowned and said, resources are limited, and I cannot send someone alone to protect a remote village. Taylor reached out and interrupted the bishop, saying to Iser, I want to know why you had a conflict with the priest. Iser didn't answer directly, but pointed out a strange blood vessel on the ground to Taylor and said, You're a scholar from the campus, do you know what this thing is? Taylor's face changed, and the reactions of several bishops became even more exaggerated, even clamoring to report. Where did you find it? Taylor asked. It parasitizes on me, the priest said, his face pale as he explained, there's something in the gray forest, I don't know what it is, but I've been controlled and even lost control and turned into a monster. If it weren't for Iser stopping me, the whole village would probably suffer. Ethan has been observing Taylor's reaction, which has made his face change. This matter is really serious. Does the priest have any strange behavior after being parasitized? Taylor asked. Yes, his thoughts have changed. Iser relayed the priest's words to Taylor. The villagers all agreed, the priest used to have a gentle and friendly personality, but recently he has suddenly become indifferent. He still doesn't allow us to eat meat and has released all the livestock we raised. He even cursed us as murderers. Evil gods. Mountain gods must be evil gods. I'm going to the gray forest. Taylor put the blood vessels on the ground into a special container and said to Ethan, I'll talk about your situation when I come back. Taylor went to the gray forest alone and warned no one to follow before leaving. Ethan stayed in the village with the others, and he sat in front of the door with a low mood. Little Morning Star also squatted next to him. Ethan, let me take you away, whispered Little Morning Star in Ethan's ear. Someone walked over from a distance. Iser looked up and saw Taylor, quickly standing up and bowing. Little Morning Star was like a formidable enemy, vigilantly staring at Taylor. Taylor was covered in a lot of ashes, but his face still had a serious expression. Excuse me, have there been any results from the investigation? Ethan couldn't help but wonder. Taylor shook his head and said, it's all burned clean. Iser nodded in disappointment, unable to find any trace of the church's high-level intervention. Along with those monsters, they have all been cleared. Taylor added, you can rest assured. Clear. Iser caught the word and remembered the mysterious person mentioned by Little Morning Star. Someone went to clear the monster. God won't let it go, Taylor said vaguely, not wanting to tell Ethan the inside story, so he changed the topic. You saved White Leaf Village, otherwise the out-of-control priest will slaughter the village. If it were to be reported, Red God would definitely be furious. It is necessary to protect Bay Village, Iser responded. Taylor walked closer and looked at Ethan, as if looking at a rare species. There aren't many fools like you, he said, Ethan didn't understand what he was saying. If this world doesn't become selfish, it won't survive. Taylor took another step forward as if testing his bottom line. I want to see if you will eventually become like us. Ethan instinctively took a step back. This action directly made Little Morning Star explode, and she quickly pulled Ethan behind her. Go back to the house and pack your things, come with us back to Hongfeng Town. Taylor didn't care and pushed his glasses. I'll wait for you at the small church in the village. It wasn't until Taylor left that Ethan breathed a sigh of relief. He returned to the room to pack his things, and Zia Kingsing followed in and whispered, that bad guy is doing an experiment with you. I know he won't help me for no reason, Ethan touched Little Morning Star's head. I heard that people on campus like to do experiments, maybe I'm his little mouse. Soon, the news that Iser was going to enter the city spread throughout the village, and everyone came to congratulate him. The girl with red hair ran over immediately and said, Brother Ethan, can I touch your dragon? Sure, Ethan nodded. The girl was very happy and carefully placed her hand on Little Morning Star. Zia Kingsing lowered her head and sniffed her hair, curious about her, as if she had the scent of an acquaintance. Ethan lifted the girl onto the dragon's back and said, Kasha, I will live in Hongfeng Town from now on. Are you still coming back to see me? Kasia asked, her blue eyes filled with reluctance. Of course I'll come back, Ethan comforted her, even though he didn't know if he had any freedom. Pack up your things. Iser tied the package to the dragon's back and rode the dragon to the small church. When they arrived at the small church, the bishops were all dumbfounded when they saw him and asked, "Do you use such a precious dragon as a means of transportation? Can this be considered a display of power, proclaiming to the whole world that I have dragons? I'm mighty." Only Taylor remained calm and said, "All right, put away your dragon and luggage." Ethan jumped off the dragon's back, and the little black dragon understood. In the blink of an eye, it turned into a white mist and penetrated Ethan's heart. "Get in the car, take this one," Taylor reminded him. Ethan quickly got into the carriage, and just as he breathed a sigh of relief, he saw Taylor also get into the carriage. In Iser's opinion, he is here to supervise himself. Fortunately, we had a peaceful journey together. Taylor held the container and observed the strange blood vessels, recording them on paper. Ethan leaned against the window and squinted for a while, then opened his eyes and arrived at the station. The first thing he saw when he got off the car was a flat slate road. The gray-black slate was neat and smooth, and even stepping on it could cast a shadow. Looking up again, the cathedral was grand and magnificent, like a peak, more than 10 times larger than the small church in the village. "Come with me, hurry up and register," said a woman dressed as a nun with disdain. She saw at a glance that the young man was a country bumpkin who had never seen the world before. "No need, I'll take him there," Taylor said. The nun was stunned and saw the golden eyes around the other person's neck. She quickly bowed, "Your Highness, you have a noble status and cannot." Taylor reached out and interrupted her, "I want to see the captain." The nun couldn't help but take a few more glances at Ethan. Is he a genius who can bring him to the leader? Ethan followed behind Taylor, passed through the corridor, and bypassed the front hall. Along the way, everyone who came and went stopped to salute and curiously looked at Ethan, whispering and discussing him. Ethan felt a lot of pressure. He wouldn't want to become famous in Hongfeng Town, would he? Taylor pushed open the door of an office and said, "Captain Judith, I want to borrow your talent to use it." The woman, known as the regimental leader, leaned back on the chair and looked at Iser. She is very beautiful, wearing a dark blue uniform, with long brown hair neatly tied up, and a sharp expression, as if examining the enemy. "You look good." After silence, the group leader joked, "How old are you? Are you old enough? Don't think about it, underage. Taylor has become commonplace." Ethan reacted and his cheeks immediately burned. The captain reached out his hand and gestured for him to shake hands with him. Out of courtesy, Iser gritted his head and held her hand. As soon as he touched the other person, he felt an electric current hitting him. He wanted to retract his arm but found himself unable to move. Chapter 5. New Life. You are listening at novelfull.audio. His body was completely out of control, and even if someone were to wield a knife and strike him now, Iser could only watch helplessly. The leader withdrew his hand and said, "He can be considered a half-superpower. His body has been strengthened, but he is still unable to use energy." Taylor was surprised. He contracted a running dragon. "You know, the dragon clan is very picky about the emperor. The dragons are very intelligent, who knows why they chose the emperor," said the captain. Beside him, Iser was still in shock, his whole body weak and powerless, his legs trembling. Upon hearing the captain's words, Taylor was very disappointed. He had thought that the youth would be a special genius. However, the captain was very interested in Iser, and she stood up and walked over with an ambiguous smile on her face. Ethan's gaze shifted from overhead to level, and finally lifted his head to look up at Judith. He took a big step back in fear of this height difference. The captain laughed at his reaction and said, "I'm so scared, I won't eat you again." Ethan dare not speak, "It's too scary." The people in Hongfeng Town are really scary. Seeing how foolish you are, I kindly remind you not to reveal that you have a dragon, otherwise someone will kill you and rob you of it. The captain reminded her and she took out a crystal clear fruit. There is an extraordinary creature melted here. If your running dragon eats it, it can disguise itself as another creature. Ethan took the fruit and felt like holding a piece of ice. What did you do for him with such a precious thing? Taylor was puzzled. Who gave him a dragon? Judith said, "All right, I'm busy now, you can leave now." Ethan slipped out of the office, followed by Taylor. Taylor's disappointment is beyond words. Ethan is very embarrassed. He's not really a genius, he just happened to save Little Morning Star. Although you are only a semi-awakened superpower, you have contracted to run a dragon and still need to stay in Hongfeng Town. You need to report before leaving the city, Taylor reminded. Okay, Ethan nodded, it didn't seem like he had completely lost his freedom. Separated from the cathedral, Taylor turned back to the captain's office. Seeing him, Judith was not surprised. Is he really half awakened? Taylor asked. Judith nodded and said, I don't need to lie to you, but his contract beast is quite precious. Do you want to include him in the teaching group? Of course, good things are reserved for oneself, Judith said bluntly. It was only after escaping from the cathedral that Ethan breathed a sigh of relief. The journey of making a living in Hongfeng Town has officially begun. It is Iser's first time entering the city. Although Hongfeng Town is not big, it is very prosperous, with people coming and going on the streets and shops one by one. What caught Iser's attention were a few superpowers, with their contract beasts following behind. Someone is holding a leopard with a black background and red stripes, and the red patterns are shining and disappearing. There was a bird standing on someone's shoulder, with colorful feathers and a slender tail that resembled a phoenix tail. Some people were riding a majestic male lion, with its white lion spreading its wings and carrying its owner soaring in the sky, causing onlookers to exclaim with envy. In Hongfeng Town, the existence of psychics is not a secret. Ethan began to fantasize that their contract beasts did not have their own dominance, and that releasing the dragon would be considered imposing. It can just be used as a means of transportation. No, Little Morning Star protested in space. Ethan was startled and silently asked in his heart, why did you suddenly speak? The cathedral is too dangerous, it's safe now, said Little Morning Star, looking curiously at the extra fruits in the space. Why don't I eat the transformation fruits and go out to play with you? Ethan was about to refuse when he heard Little Morning Star pleading. Ethan, please, I want to go out and play. Okay. Ethan was also curious about what the fruit would turn into after eating it. Little Morning Star ran out eagerly. Iser looked expectantly at the white mist, and out of it came a pure white goat, still a long-haired one, looking round and rolling. The snow mountain antelope, a weak and prolific extraordinary creature, has even been domesticated and raised as a domestic animal. Lamb and cashmere are popular nationwide. Little Morning Star is speechless. Ethan was also speechless. The surrounding carnivorous creatures all cast hungry eyes. A psychic next to him joked, are you planning to raise it to eat? Ethan awkwardly made a comeback and said, it's very cute, very spiritual, that's what I like. He strolled along the street with Little Morning Star, observing the environment, recording maps, and searching for a place to live. From west to east, the buildings are getting shorter and older, and to the east seems to be the old city area. Finally found a place to rest, which is the park in the old city area, with several benches for people to rest on. I don't want to become a sheep, I'm not at all domineering, said Little Morning Star, following behind Ethan in a sullen manner. Voice comes from the heart, and for safety reasons, Little Morning Star communicates spiritually with Iser through a contract in front of people. It's quite cute, I like it, Ethan comforted her. Finding a bench, Iser finally breathed a sigh of relief and sat down to plan for the future. He must explore the Grey Forest, so he needs to find ways to improve his abilities. But he knows nothing about the extraordinary world, doesn't know how to improve, and doesn't know how to cultivate contract beasts. The most urgent thing in front of him was that it was getting late and he had no relatives in Hongfeng Town, not even a place to stay. The church only knows how to complete tasks and has no idea how you will live here when you leave home, said Xiaoqin Xinghua indignantly. Ethan touched her head and said, let's find a place to live. There should be a cave here, let's find a cave to live in, said Little Morning Star. A cave. Iser looked around and realized that there were caves in the wild, but there were bridges and caves. There is a river in the small town that divides the old city into two parts. A large bridge spans the river and there are two bridge openings near the riverbank. Ethan ran to the bottom of the bridge with the Little Morning Star. This place was not bad, but sheltered from the wind and rain without being conspicuous. Someone has already settled under the bridge, and across from Iser sits a beggar uncle. Yu reading www.uukangshu.net. Young man, did you argue with your family and run away from home? The beggar uncle saw that there were also contract beasts around him. Those who could raise contract beasts were all supernatural beings, which one did not come from a noble family. Ethan didn't know how to answer, just gave an awkward smile. At this moment, Little Morning Star tugged at Ethan's clothes and said, Ethan, it smells so good. Can you smell it? She stretched her neck to smell the air and followed the scent to see a relief home. It seemed like there was really a fragrance, and Iser smelled the taste of mushroom cream soup. As the wind blew, the fragrance became stronger and stronger. His stomach was growling incessantly. He didn't feel hungry just now, and now he's so hungry that he's scratching his heart and lungs. Dinner's ready. The beggar across from him took out his bowl and walked out of the bridge. Ethan and Little Morning Star exchanged a glance and decided to go grab a meal. The relief home is easy to recognize because the building is white and the aroma of mushroom cream soup wafts from the door. Strange to say, Iser only saw the beggar go to fetch food, didn't the other wanderers come? A caregiver sister at the entrance of the relief center saw the beggar and asked helplessly, why don't you live here? The relief center provides free food and accommodation. The beggar shook his head and said, I like to wander outside. You can take him in, he's also homeless. The beggar uncle pointed to Iser behind him. Ethan was named. The caregiver sister smiled and asked, Ah, Iser. Pedro, is that right? If you come from the village to the town and have nowhere to live, you can come to us. How do you know all this? Ethan was surprised. He had just come out of the cathedral, and the news had already arrived here. Our dean is very well informed, said the caregiver sister with a proud expression on her face. We are happy to provide help to those in need. Chapter 6. Uninvited Guests. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Ethan and Little Morning Star combined and stayed overnight for 2 nights to solve the urgent situation. His room is on the east wing of the second floor, where there is a row of rooms used for accommodation. Just as Ethan was opening the door, the neighbor next door happened to be out. The neighbor is a young girl, looking only 14 years old, with a very white skin and almost no visible blood, as if she is seriously ill. Ethan stared at her thin back for a while before entering his own room. As soon as he entered the room, he took out the luggage from the space, replaced the bedding with his own, and stuffed the old bedding into the cabinet. Xiaoqingsing also ran out to breathe, maintaining the form of a goat and curious about everything in the room, poking and arching here and there. There was a full-body mirror in the room, and Little Morning Star was startled when he passed by for the first time. After realizing it, he realized that the fat sheep inside was himself. Ethan also approached curiously. He only had a small mirror at home, and it was the first time he had seen such a large full-body mirror. In the mirror, a young man wearing coarse cloth clothes was reflected, with messy brown hair that was particularly prominent. He looked like a refugee escaping from a fire. Although he looked miserable, his blue eyes were very lively. A knock on the door rang out. Xiaoqingsing quickly turned into a puff of smoke and slipped into the space. Iser opened the door and saw the caregiver sister carrying something in. After finishing your meal, just leave it outside the door, the caregiver sister handed him a basket and a handful of packages. Your new clothes. Ethan accepted it and suddenly remembered his neighbor next door. He asked, is there a young girl living next door? I see her complexion is not good, maybe she's sick. The caregiver sister looked bewildered and said, there's no one next door. It's probably someone's child who's been wandering around. Thank you for reminding me. Seeing off the caregiver sister, Iser eagerly opened dinner. The dinner was very rich, with a large bowl of mushroom cream soup, 2 roasted chickens, a whole piece of bread, and a pack of contract animal rations. Contract beasts rations. Ethan suddenly realized that there was also little Morning Star's portion for this meal, and they were really thoughtful. After a meal, little Morning Star ate his ration, plus 2/3 of his dinner. Ethan ate the remaining 1/3. He had an illusion that this dinner seemed to have been given to him by little Morning Star. Eating a full meal, taking a hot shower, Ethan is ready to go to bed. Can I sleep in bed? Said little Morning Star as she rested her head on the bed will collapse. Iser lay down on the bedboard, which was creaking. If little Morning Star came up again, it would probably collapse directly. Xiaoqingsing pouted and curled up, sleeping on the ground. Alright, I'll make the floor. Ethan couldn't bear to see her so pitiful, so he simply pieced the 2 beds of bedding together. Alright, come over. Xiaoqingsing happily ran over and curled up in a ball on the floor. Ethan slept next to him, wrapped in a blanket, and after some thought, he covered little Morning Star with a blanket. Ethan, I can't sleep. Little Morning Star arched Ethan's head, will we stay in town and not go home in the future? Maybe, I can't go back at the moment, Ethan frowned with sorrow as he thought about it. I don't know how to make a living in the city yet. We have money, I have saved up a lot of gold, silver, and jewelry. Little Morning Star was puzzled, just go buy it directly. Who would believe that a poor boy from the countryside has so many gold, silver, and jewels? If he takes them out to spend money, he will be mistaken for a thief. Ethan sighed, go and inquire tomorrow. I believe there is a way to make a living in the city. As they chatted, they both felt a bit tired. Close your eyes and slowly fall asleep. While sleeping, Ethan heard the window creaking non-stop. He was awakened and opened his eyes to see a crack in the window. Iser. He heard little Morning Star calling his name, but the sound came from his heart, as if someone was speaking in his mind. Iser touched the little Morning Star curled up next to her with a puzzled expression on her face. She breathed evenly and seemed to be sleeping soundly. Don't move, there's something in the room. The voice of little Morning Star came from his mind once again. This time, Iser finally understood that he was frozen in place, searching for suspicious targets in the darkness with his eyes open. The room was pitch black, and he couldn't see anything, yet he felt enemies everywhere. At this moment, Xiaoqingsing opened her eyes, which emitted a flowing light like dragon pupils. Through the light, Iser saw a person hanging upside down from the ceiling. The person hanging upside down let out a frightened cry under the gaze of the dragon's pupils. Xiaoqingsing jumped up and pounced on the mysterious person hanging upside down, but she forgot that she was still a sheep and couldn't reach the height of her jump. At this moment, a gust of wind blew in, and the window was completely opened, allowing moonlight to shine in. Ethan finally saw through the mysterious person, who was a huge bat hanging upside down from the ceiling, as big as a person. Its head is like a fox, with pointed ears and a hint of white on its eyebrows. The big bat also saw the opponent's appearance clearly and realized that it was just a chubby goat. It let out contemptuous laughter. The little Morning Star was mocked by it and immediately became furious, wanting to pull it down and rub it against the ground. The big bat spread its wings and launched an attack. It had a clear mind and was just a small and plump antelope. However, a flame greeted it, and little Morning Star's dragon flame sprayed all over its face. The big bat let out a scream and fell from mid-air. It never expected to encounter the Spitfire sheep in its lifetime. Before it could even get up, the Spitfire sheep had already jumped onto it, lifting its hooves and stomping on it. It screamed in agony and quickly rolled out of the window. Xiaoqingsing snorted. Ethan, who was watching from the side, quickly brushed her hair and said, "You're not angry anymore, it's already been beaten away by you." Xiaoqingsing calmed down for a moment and said, "That's an extraordinary creature. It's a bit weak. Even the lower-level monsters in the Grey Forest can control elements to strengthen their defense or claws. It seems that this bat doesn't know how to do it. Iser doesn't believe it's wild, but this is the densely populated town of Red Maple. Maybe some superpower deliberately hid their strength to test me, and the relief center is not peaceful either." Xiao Qingqing nodded and said, "I can't figure out what the other person is up to." Ethan remembered Captain Judith's words, "Sometimes, mediocrity is the best protective color." Little Morning Star seemed to understand, "Then I will hide my strength in the future." After this incident, Ethan didn't sleep well all night. The next day when he opened his eyes, the sunlight was shining brightly in the room. Ethan lay in bed and didn't think about it, but when he thought about the designated meal at the relief home, he still managed to get up from his bed in pain. Xiaoqingsing was sleeping soundly, and as soon as Iser left, he flipped over and rolled the blanket onto himself. "Don't you come downstairs with me?" Ethan asked. Xiaoqingsing thought for a moment, but because she was too worried that the foolish owner would encounter bad people while eating, she reluctantly left the bed and returned to the space. After washing up, Ethan went to the cafeteria to have a meal, and when he went downstairs, he met the girl from yesterday again. The girl's face was still not rosy, and she was also sickly. Ethan happened to see her coming out of the next door with something in her hand. The girl gave him a wary glance and quickly ran away. Ethan couldn't help but feel suspicious. She shouldn't be stealing something. Locked the door and went to the restaurant, and Iser found an inconspicuous spot. He only wanted to be unknown, but someone happened to come straight towards him. A well-dressed old lady walked over, and when others saw her, they would call out to the dean. She came to Iser's table and sat down. "Hello Dean," Iser quickly greeted. "You should have a lot of doubts," said the dean with a smile. Chapter 7. Finding Jobs. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Ethan certainly has doubts, but the biggest one is why the relief home would help others without compensation, which conflicts with Taylor's words. As if sensing Iser's concerns, the dean said, "I helped you also for the sake of Hongfeng Town. For supernatural beings like you who were forced to come here, if you wander outside, you may cause a lot of trouble. It's better to provide help to help you settle down. You are really kind-hearted," Iser sincerely thanked. "I will adapt to life here as soon as possible and be self-sufficient. Unlike in the countryside, everything in town needs to be bought for money." "You can find a job," said the dean. "On the bulletin board outside the church, various information is published every day. Go there and look for it. At least in the territory of the Red God, the functions of the church have always been comprehensive, and the church that holds real power has to manage everything. Previously, even if a chicken was lost in the village, the priest had to retrieve it." After a few more polite words, the dean lady left. As soon as she left, the people around her began to discuss. "She couldn't be so kind, letting us live and eat for free every day. Where did she get any income from? There are no good people these days, maybe it's for other purposes. It's better to quickly find a job and move out. The more you live here, the more uneasy you feel." These voices also reached Little Morning Star's ears, but Little Morning Star had a different opinion. "Ethan, I think she's a bit strange." "What does it mean?" "She is an ordinary person," said Little Morning Star. "The director of a relief home that takes in supernatural beings is actually an ordinary person. Compared to the semi-awakened Iser, Little Morning Star can perceive whether the other party is awakened. Iser understood and said, if, as she said, the orphanage takes in psychics, then there must be corresponding means to control the situation. So, I'm thinking either she has power in her hands, or there is someone else in real power. The foolish master is so smart. Little Morning Star's eyes sparkled. Am I stupid or smart? Ethan asked, silently shedding tears in his heart, wondering why he was a fool in the eyes of Little Morning Star. Stupid and smart, Little Morning Star made a face. Let's go find a job first, Ethan planned to take a look. If we don't make money, we'll have to live in a bridge. In his current state of poverty, he couldn't use guarding his treasure. He planned to earn money and change into decent clothes, and then choose some suitable things to go to the pawn shop to exchange money. When going out to the church, Iser calculated the distance and found that the relief home was not very close to the church. There were 3 modes of transportation to choose from: horses, carriages, and rickshaws. Ethan doesn't have any money to spend, he can't afford to ride a car, but he has his own means of transportation and can ride a gazelle on the road. Little Morning Star has no complaints, she likes to run around, which happens to give her exercise time. The people on the road cast curious glances, while other supernatural beings had contracted many powerful and domineering creatures. This strange young man flaunted his sheep every day. Ethan has already opened his eyes, and now he wants everyone to know that he is just a weak superpower who only wants to work and earn some money. He asks all the superpower leaders to let him go. When he arrived at the church, Iser found that whether it was a cathedral or a regular church, there was always a whole complex of buildings, along with monasteries, merged together. The nuns and monks plunged into the complicated affairs, without time to attend to their studies and prayers. Iser headed straight to the bulletin board, which was covered with various job postings, each with a threshold. Either it's an accountant, painter, tailor, or someone with a professional background, either it requires a degree, preferably a bachelor's degree from the Shinshu campus, or at worst, education. The salary ranges from 2 gold coins to 6 gold coins per month, but it is generally required to work from morning till night, with only 4 days of rest time per month. Ethan doesn't fit any of them, the more he looks at them, the cooler his heart becomes. At this point, several monks brought out new notices and posted them on the bulletin board. Ethan caught a glimpse of a bat's portrait in his spare light, and curiously ran to take a look. Zaya Kingsing was also very curious, and everyone ran to join the fun. The notice says that bats have recently attacked humans. Although they are low-level extraordinary creatures, residents are advised to strengthen their protection and lock doors and windows. The bat on the canvas looks very similar to the one that attacked him last night, with a bounty of 30 gold coins. If I want to take on a task, what do I need to do? Iser asked. The monk beside him said, then you have to hurry up and offer a reward. Only those who receive the reward order can receive the reward. If bats are wild, wouldn't it be impossible to control them when they fly into the wild? Iser asked. Bats can come and go freely, but psychics are not free. With a bounty, you can leave the city, but there is a time limit for catching prey within the specified time. At this moment, Little Morning Star arched Iser and said from his heart, do you want to accept a bounty? 30 gold coins, and you can still get the freedom to leave the city. As a dragon, she loves sparkling gold and silver jewelry the most, and her eyes sparkle when she sees gold coins. Ethan is also envious of those 30 gold coins, and most people's monthly salary will not exceed 5 gold coins, which is a huge sum of money. At this moment, someone took the lead and a golden-haired young prodigy unveiled the bounty, followed by a snow-winged flying lion. This lion symbolizes his strength, and no one dares to compete with him. Your sheep are trained well. The owner of the snow-winged flying lion raised his chin at Iser, and his lion was staring at the Little Morning Star, drooling greedily. Iser smiled and said, she's just an ordinary antelope, there's really nothing special about her. Lion owner. Why is he talking like this? Are you afraid that I might steal his sheep? Who would go and steal the sheep? Oh my goodness. Leaving the church, Ethan frowned and said, "Little Morning Star, I can't find a job." He came to the town and found that he didn't know anything and couldn't do anything. "Let's go see other churches," Little Morning Star advised him not to lose heart and took him around each church. "Even if you can't find a job, you can still accept a reward." UU reading www.uukangshu.net. Ethan sighed after reading the last bulletin board, "I can't find a job, and the bounty is also empty." Xiaoqingsing also fell silent. There was no need to hunt in the town, and Iser was unemployed when he arrived. Moreover, there are not many bounty missions, and basically they are sold out as soon as they are new. The psychics not only value the bounty, but also the opportunity to leave the city. Only some price information is displayed on it, but there is no transaction information. Just as Ethan was curious, someone called his name. Iser Pedro. A man walked over, looking 40 years old with a smile on his face. Iser noticed that the uniform style on his body was very similar to that of the captain, belonging to the Red God Church but not very common. "I'm Ken Davis. The captain wants me to supervise you, so don't put any pressure on me. I'm just doing routine work and won't disturb your normal life," explained the Davis man. "Captain Judith?" Iser asked, with an ominous premonition. Davis nodded and said, "The captain is very optimistic about you." Ethan suspected that Judith, the leader of the regiment, was not serious at all. "Do you seem to be in trouble?" Davis asked. "I want to make money." Ethan felt very frustrated. "Finding a job in Hongfeng Town is indeed difficult, but you are a superpower and can take on tasks." "I didn't get it." Iser's answer was plain and unadorned. "It's really not easy to grab," Davis thought for a moment. "I have a job under my command that requires someone, so coming to me would be convenient for me to supervise you." Ethan weighed it and realized that he couldn't find a job on his own now. The risk of living in a relief home was too high, and following Davis was not free enough, but at least there was still security. So, Iser agreed to him. Chapter 8. Cathedral in Distress. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Davis brought Iser back to the cathedral. Ethan returned to the cathedral, and the cobblestone path was still clean enough to reflect people. Captain Judith stood at the entrance of the cathedral, feeling good. After putting away her sharp expression, she was very bright and charming. Her gaze swept over and locked onto Iser. Ethan felt like he was being targeted by a hunter. "I see he can't find a job, so I want him to come here and help," Davis explained. Judith nodded and said to Ethan, "Your outfit looks much more pleasing to the eye." Ethan instinctively lowered his head to look at the clothes, and this new outfit was indeed more refined than the old coarse cloth clothes. One hand touched his hair while he lowered his head, and when he looked up again, the perpetrator had already left. "Come with me." Davis took him to a small warehouse. As soon as he opened the door, Iser saw a room full of gifts. "It's almost God's birthday, and all the gifts are ready, but I've been busy and haven't sorted them out yet." Davis put 4 different gifts together, like this: "They'll be sorted out and someone will come to pick them up later." As soon as the words fell, the person who came to pick up the gift arrived. A golden light door appeared, and a young man wearing the same uniform walked out, but he was also wearing a long coat outside. The young man looked around 20 years old, with half a long blonde hair, emerald green eyes, a tall and graceful figure with delicate and handsome features, and a red rose hanging around his neck. He is very young and handsome, but lacks the energy of a young person, and there is no expression on his face. "Eric, this is the helper I found," Davis quickly introduced. "He helped you distribute gifts, you just need to give them." Ethan also greeted with a smile. But Eric seemed very cold. He just gave Ethan a faint glance and said, "I recognize it. It's Judith's new love." Ethan looked dumbfounded. "Eric, don't talk nonsense," Davis panicked and quickly corrected. Eric collected a pile of gifts into the space and disappeared into a beam of light. He doesn't seem to like me, Iser felt a huge repulsion. At this moment, a gossiping female voice sounded outside the door, he is the male favorite of the captain, of course he doesn't like you anymore. Iser expressed shock, the city people really know how to play. Davis took a deep breath and covered his face with worry. Claudia, can't you keep any secrets? You're not going to kill me, are you? Ethan felt too innocent and didn't want to get involved in this complicated relationship. Davis shook his head and said, let's get to work quickly. Ethan was the only one left in the small warehouse. As soon as he breathed a sigh of relief, he heard Little Morning Star in the space ask, what is a male pet? Ethan held it back for a while, not knowing how to explain, and gritted his head to talk nonsense, it's just a humanoid contract beast. Can humans also be pets? Little Morning Star suddenly regretted, if I had known that humans could also be contracted, I would have contracted you back then. Ethan dared not continue the topic and lowered his head to organize a few gifts. Suddenly, he felt a flash of light behind him. When he turned around and saw Eric, he quickly stepped aside. Eric took something and left, ignoring Ethan throughout, but the red rose on his neck aroused Ethan's curiosity. The Sot Empire believed in the 7 gods, each with its own divine domain. Red Maple Town, located within the territory of the Red God, naturally believed in the Red God. The symbol of the Red God is a rose, and as long as you wear the rose symbol, it means you believe in the Red God. At the same time, the church has a strict hierarchy and will award believers different roses according to their level. The types of metals symbolize levels, while black iron, silver, and gold symbolize different levels from low to high. Ethan knows this, but he has never heard of a red rose. What is a red rose, a more secretive level? While he was lost in thought, a rustling sound came from the ceiling above, as if something was crawling inside. Ethan looked up at the ceiling, and the overhead chandelier swayed slightly with the sound. Little Morning Star ran out of space, vigilantly staring at the ceiling. Little Morning Star, can you sense anything? Ethan asked. Xiaoqingsing didn't answer, she was completely focused on staring at the ceiling. Ethan also held his breath. After the room quieted down, he heard the sound of nails scratching on the ceiling, as if something was crawling inside. Time passed by minute by second, and Little Morning Star suddenly felt a change in his face. Run! She turned her head and ran towards the door against Iser. The door slammed shut with a loud bang, and a thick layer of cold ice quickly covered the door panel, sealing Iser's retreat. At the same time, there was a sound of shattering from the ceiling, with fragments crashing down and something falling along with it, making a muffled sound when it landed. Iser turned around and saw a monster covered in gray and white. The monster is covered in scales, with a head like a deer, irregular horns on its head, and a body like a leopard. It has 4 front legs and a pair of hind legs, and a thick tail that looks like a monkey's tail. How could it be this thing? Iser recognized it. 3 years ago, in the depths of the gray forest, he saw the same monster. This high-level monster should be found deep in the gray forest. Why are there monsters from the gray forest in the cathedral? The monster sniffed the air, smelled the scent of the creature, and followed the scent to lock in Iser. The door of the small warehouse has been sealed with ice, and Eric doesn't know when he will be back. Ethan can only face the monster alone. I'll hold it, you quickly find tools to smash the door open. Little Morning Star quickly regained his true body, and a pair of wings spread out on the furry back of the sheep. A black dragon the size of a horse tore through its sheepskin disguise and emerged. Yu reading www.yuukangshu.net. Faced with high-level monsters, Iser knew he couldn't help. All he could do was smash open the door and go out to find help. Fortunately, his only advantage was his strength. He picked up a milky white stone chair and smashed it hard onto the ice. The ice was much stronger than ordinary ice, but it still cracked. The monster became wary, seeming to be somewhat afraid of the black dragon in front of it, but driven by hunger, it still launched an attack. A string of icicles rose from the ground, and the temperature in the warehouse instantly dropped. The monster continued to use water elements to attack, making it an extraordinary creature of water elements. The little morning star spread its wings, and sparks flashed on her dragon scales. A fiery area quickly spread out on the ground beneath her feet. The moment the icicle comes into contact with the flame, it melts into water, and the droplets make a hissing sound on the ground. After the barrier formed by the flames completely protected Iser, little morning star took a step and headed straight towards the monster. Now she can beat it without any hesitation. The monster saw the imposing black dragon and first panicked and retreated, then roared wildly and launched an attack, with its strength covered in cold ice wherever it passed. However, this icy layer melted and even turned into water vapor when it touched Little Morning Star. Little Morning Star pounced on the monster. The monster touched her scales and screamed from the scorching heat. The frost all over her body melted instantly, as if it had fallen on a soldering iron. It quickly retreated and dodged. As it turned and ran away, Little Morning Star bit its big tail and flapped its wings, flying to the ceiling. The monster cannot fly and loses balance after being hung up, struggling in terror. Little Morning Star flew over an ice cream and threw it down. With a puff, the monster was poked onto the icicle it had made itself. Chapter 9. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The monster let out a scream, struggling in vain, and the cry sounded as if it had some kind of pattern. On the other side, Iser had already broken open half of the ice. He reached in and turned the door lock, which opened with a click. He breathed a sigh of relief and picked up the stool to continue smashing. I'm here. Little Morning Star saw that the monster had been controlled and ran to help. Let me give it a try with fire. Ethan dodged aside. Xiaoqingsing took a deep breath and was about to spew fire when suddenly he heard the sound of the ceiling collapsing overhead. She quickly pounced on Ethan, protecting herself with her wings, and the collapsed ceiling and chandelier all hit her. Iser was not injured. He crawled out of the ruins and went to see the situation of Little Morning Star as soon as possible. A broken crossbeam hit Little Morning Star's waist, and she was pinned down and unable to move. In the distance, there was another monster that fell from the collapse just now. Its eyes were filled with anger when it saw its companion die tragically. Ethan, go smash the door quickly. Little Morning Star painfully extended his wings and pushed Ethan. Don't be afraid, I'll help you move it. Ethan hugged the crossbeam, exerting all his strength. The crossbeam in his arms finally trembled and lifted up. A series of footsteps sounded from behind, and the breath of some creature blew onto Ethan. He dared not turn back and had no time to do so, still stubbornly moving the crossbeam away. The monster behind him flashed hatred in his eyes and opened his bloody mouth to bite Ethan. At the critical moment, the crossbeam finally moved away, and Little Morning Star struggled to get up and bit the monster's neck. The monster waved its claws unwillingly, and Iser quickly dodged, but a scratch was still scraped from behind. Ethan couldn't figure it out. This guy came at him as soon as he landed. Did he have the wisdom to know that Little Morning Star was just a contract beast, so he recognized himself as the enemy? Little Morning Star kept biting the monster without letting go. The monster's vengeful heart lost its rationality. Even if it was burned, it couldn't stop and dragged Little Morning Star forward for a few meters. After several tugs and tugs, Xiaoqingsing stabilized his balance and twisted his body to throw the monster behind him. The monster rushed towards Iser for revenge, but was stopped by the Little Morning Star. The scene was chaotic and unbearable. Suddenly, the monster quieted down, and Little Morning Star also quieted down. Ethan was not aware of it, but also had a premonition that a terrible guy was coming. Xiaoqingsing opened her mouth, withdrew her wings, and quickly transformed back into an antelope, huddled next to Iser to watch the play. The monster panicked and climbed up the icicle, trying to escape back to the second floor. Ethan and Little Morning Star were next to each other, looking curious and waiting for the next thing. Being able to turn Little Morning Star back into a sheep to watch the play showed that this terrifying guy posed no threat to him. The ice on the door automatically shattered into powder, and with a clang it reopened. A tall figure walked in. Captain Judith looked at the room full of ice, scattered ceilings and chandeliers, as well as spoiled gifts and statues of the Red God, and took a deep breath. "Can you also smash my lord's statue?" Judith was about to be infuriated by the monster. Ethan dared not speak and secretly watched the play. Xiaoqingsing stared with big eyes and openly watched the play. The monster climbed up the ceiling in despair and panic, but was pulled in mid-air by an invisible force. It seems like a pair of invisible hands pulled it off. The monster struggled to see Judith at the door, and its expression became frightened, as if it had seen something terrifying. Then, it collapsed straight to the ground. "What is the situation?" Iser was stunned. Was it scared to death? After seeing Judith, the monster was so frightened that it died suddenly. Little Morning Star was shocked, as Judith did not take action. Obviously, the monster knew what would make Judith scared to death. "Are you okay?" Judith walked up to Ethan and breathed a sigh of relief as she saw his face look good. "Your luck is too bad. You've had some bad luck. Why are there monsters in the cathedral? Shouldn't this be the safest place?" Ethan asked, trying to gather some intelligence by insinuating. "Why do the monsters in the Grey Forest come here?" "It was caught from the Grey Forest," Judith said. This answer made Ethan even more puzzled. Why did he bring the monster and lock it up in the cathedral? Ethan's head spun fast, trying to come up with a second question and come up with something else. Judith's hand climbed up when he was lost in thought and placed it on his neck. Ethan's mind suddenly cleared up, and he was too scared to move. Recalling the monster that had died, he felt like he would explain it to him at any moment. "I know you come from Bay Village. If I were you, I wouldn't have revealed anything about the Grey Forest. Like your dragon, it would have brought you fatal consequences. So, is the matter of Grey Forest classified?" Iser asked. "Yes, only the Order and the senior officials of the Vatican can have contact," Judith nodded. "The cult." Iser heard a strange and familiar name. The religious order is a very special existence. Initially, it was just an armed force formed by the Church, but later it was directly responsible to the Red God and completely independent. On the surface, the Church is unified, but in reality, it has long been divided into the Vatican and the diocese, competing with each other, but in terms of strength, the cult is full of talented individuals, and even high-level archbishops are not qualified to enter. Moreover, the cult is directly under the command of the true gods, and upon entering the cult, there is an opportunity to communicate directly with the gods. "Is it a red rose?" Iser said his guess. "How did you know?" Judith was surprised. "Did you peek at the secret?" Ethan quickly denied. "I guess it's because Eric has a red rose around his neck." "I see. Are you the leader?" Iser asked tentatively. Although he had also doubted the title of leader, he wouldn't even think of the leader of the cult if he were killed. "Otherwise," Judith said lightly. A golden light flashed by, and Eric happened to come back. He looked at a messy small warehouse and Judith, who was pinching Ethan's neck. "What's wrong?" Eric, even though he was indifferent, was stunned by this sudden situation. Two of them escaped. Judith let go as if nothing had happened. "It's impossible, I did the sealing of their cages," Eric said in confusion. "I couldn't have intentionally released them, could I?" "Of course I believe you don't know," Judith smiled and hugged Eric's shoulder. "Take him to the infirmary." Eric nodded and left with Ethan, silent and preoccupied all the way. Sitting in the infirmary, Iser's back wound was healed, but his clothes had a big tear, and the new clothes he had just received were worn out. "Xiaoqingsing is getting better quickly, it's already okay now." She's wandering around outside listening to gossip. The story in the small warehouse has spread throughout the entire cathedral, with several versions of rumors. That kid Iser is really lucky. I heard that two high-level extraordinary creatures escaped. If it weren't for the leader's timely arrival, he would have died, a nun whispered. But when the captain arrived, one had already died, which was killed by Iser's sheep. The other nun looked incredulous and said, "Oh my God, a sheep is so powerful." No wonder it was the person brought to the captain by Lord Taylor. Maybe he's also a genius and has the opportunity to join the cult. The leader really likes him. I bet he will definitely join the teaching group. However, Claudia's sister said that Eric was the young lover just found by the captain, and the captain doesn't know how to walk on two boats. Sisters, how can there be only one person in the leader's harem? Xiao Qingqing listened to a lot of gossip and went back to the infirmary to reveal everything to Ethan. He talked about the history of harem gossip for half an hour. Ethan looked embarrassed and said, "Little Morning Star, have you heard anything else, such as how the monster escaped?" "Yes, they suspect it's Eric because you two are rivals in love." Ethan was speechless, and this was another bloody notebook. "Little Morning Star, Eric and I are not rivals in love." He stood up in excitement and suddenly met Eric's 4 eyes as he walked in at the door. Chapter 10. Empowered Girl. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Who are you talking to? Eric looked around and there was no one else in the room except for a sheep. Is it possible that he has a habit of talking to contract beasts to himself? Iser was speechless. Eric placed a set of clothes and a string of coins on the table. "This is the compensation for your clothes, along with the loss fee. Remember to come and change the dressing tomorrow," he said. He finished speaking and left. Ethan picked up the money and counted it, totaling 20 gold coins. He could buy a finely crafted piece of clothing and rent a house. With the start-up funds, we can start the day of exchanging pawns for money. At this moment, another person arrived outside the door. This afternoon, the management of the cathedral, big and small, came to express their apologies and warm condolences. Ethan wanted to escape, but was held here for an afternoon of observation. As he was about to leave, Davis apologized once again. "I'm really sorry, but I had an accident when I put you in the cathedral. The world of superpowers is full of danger, and you need to improve yourself as soon as possible. Do you have any good methods?" Iser threw the question to Davis, who didn't know what to do and urgently needed someone to help him get started. Davis looked embarrassed and said, "I'm sorry, but due to church regulations, I can't help you. As official personnel, we cannot help ordinary people awaken, nor can we help awakened individuals enhance their strength. The church consciously controls the spread of power." Despite not receiving any help, Iser still said thank you. On the way back to the relief home, Iser was thinking, since the official kept their mouths shut and refused to reveal the method of becoming stronger, what about unofficials? Where can I find unofficial people stealing teachers? When I was a child, I saw that my mother could mobilize energy to condense water into ice, move objects, and even enchant them. The monster I saw today can also control water elements, but I have no other abilities besides being strong. He needs to find a way to gather some intelligence and see how to improve it. Little Morning Star, do you have any good ideas? Ethan asked. Xiao Qingqing couldn't understand. "I don't know. I've been so skilled since I was born. Isn't it natural for me to mobilize power and control elements?" Ethan had a sense of desolation as he was crushed by fate. What's even more tragic is that there was no one on the way home, and people were afraid of bats that would harm people, so they all hid. Only Ethan is still on the way. Xiaoqingxing quickened his pace and hurried to the relief home. The lights of the relief home have not been turned off yet, but the door is half open and almost locked. A figure sneaked out and disappeared into the night. Looking like the sickly girl, she followed the bridge to the area east of the bridge. "It's strange, she's so sick. What is she doing out at night? Ethan retrieved the little morning star and entered the relief home. After dinner and feeding little morning star, Ethan began to take stock of the day's harvest. Now, he knows that the Grey Forest is a classified event, and the church is secretly studying those monsters. It's becoming increasingly complex to have a big shot like the head of the church appear in the small town, and what happens in the Grey Forest. Although injured in the fight, I received 20 gold coins and received real startup funds. The results are quite good. It would be great if we could find a way. Ethan walked to the window, surrounded by bungalows with a wide view on the second floor. The old city fell asleep in the darkness, but Iser knew that it was just a surface, and another world of supernatural beings was hidden beneath the surface. Unfortunately, he doesn't understand anything and no one has introduced him to it. I have an idea. Little Morning Star had a sudden idea. Join the teaching group. Become an internal member and enjoy internal resources. Teachers are up to you to choose from, and you can learn how to improve your skills hand in hand. Is it just me? This was Ethan's subconscious idea, but then he thought, yes, the simplest and most brutal way to investigate the Grey Forest is to join the cult, isn't it? Tomorrow I went to try my luck with Judith, and he made several drafts for it. He didn't go to bed until he was satisfied, and even locked the doors and windows before turning off the lights. In the middle of the night, he felt something pressing on his stomach and reached out to touch the sheep's head, pushing it hard. After a while, Little Morning Star pillowed up again. Ethan eventually compromised and became a pillow. I had no dreams all night, and when I woke up in the morning, Iser's mental state was much better than yesterday. Xiaoqingsing was still sleeping under his pillow, and Iser couldn't bear to wake her up. He tiptoed up and took her back into the space. He packed up and prepared to go downstairs. At the staircase, he saw a pale-faced girl leaning against the wall with her arms in her arms, her eyes full of vigilance. "Where did you see me go?" the girl asked, with a small cat-like face, chestnut eyes, and brown hair tied into two ponytails. "The clothes on my body have a simple and worn style, but they are washed very clean." "Ah. What are you saying? I don't know." Ethan pretended to be confused and looked bewildered. The girl walked over and grabbed Ethan's clothes. "I warn you, mind my own business." Her strength was astonishing, and Ethan was pulled so hard that he couldn't stand. In the space, Little Morning Star asked him if he wanted to take action on his own. Ethan comforted Little Morning Star for a moment, then grabbed the hand that was gripping his collar. A chill surged from his palm, and the other person's hand was terrifyingly cold. The girl suddenly let go of her hand, hiding her hands behind her back in a taboo manner, her expression flustered as if revealing some secret. "Are you a superpower?" Iser asked. The girl was stunned for a moment, and Yu quickly ran away while reading. Ethan doesn't want to delve deeper, and he doesn't have the ability to handle the affairs of other supernatural beings. Today I'm going to the cathedral to change my dressing. Although Iser has his own potion, it's precious and can be saved. Leaving the door of the relief home, Iser looked at the nearby bridge and couldn't help but be curious, causing Little Morning Star to run onto the bridge. The area of Qiaodong is not small, and the houses look even more dilapidated. There are quite a few people on the streets, and people come and go during the day. Is this just a slum? Iser, do you want to go to Qiaodong to see it? Little Morning Star was a bit hesitant. I don't like that, I feel like I'm being isolated. Ethan nodded and said, yes, there's only one bridge on the entire river, and there's no people coming or going on either side. It's really strange. Leaving the bridge towards the cathedral, when passing by a church, Iser saw a bat hanging outside the church, and a group of people were watching. He ran to take a look and saw that the bat had no white hair on its head. It wasn't this one who broke into the house the day before yesterday. It seems that the bat that hurt people hasn't been caught yet. When we arrived at the cathedral, a notice was posted at the entrance stating that it was in disrepair for a long time and needed to be repaired. Service was temporarily suspended. Davis was waiting at the door when he saw Ethan and hurriedly took him to the infirmary. I only found out today that one of the monsters was solved by you. Davis seemed to have discovered a treasure. Your antelope is so powerful, you must be a quite talented superpower. She's too excellent, Iser said truthfully. Davis didn't react for a long time. In his understanding, the antelope was an extraordinary creature that couldn't even defeat a tiger. You're so humble, Davis laughed, barely convincing himself. After changing the medicine, Ethan couldn't sit still. Everything was ready now, and Judith was almost there.